Welcome back to Dicking Around Outdoors. It's great to have you join us. Today's video is going to be about Dutch ovens, specifically Lodge Dutch ovens, and most importantly, my least favorite Lodge Dutch oven. Now that's not to say it's a bad Dutch oven. I don't think Lodge makes a bad Dutch oven, but there is one that is my least favorite, and I wanted to share that with you for your buying decisions. Before we talk about that particular pot, let's talk about Dutch ovens in general. If you've watched my channel, you know that I do a lot of cooking in Dutch ovens. If you haven't seen it or you want to check it out, go to my playlist on Dicking Around Outdoors and look for outdoor and camping recipes. There's a lot of great cooking on there. There's a lot of really good recipes for camp, and we're using Dutch ovens. So when you think about Dutch ovens, right, there's an image that comes into mind. They've been around for a long time. The design hasn't really changed much. There are Dutch ovens for different types of cooking, and I'll show you one of those in a minute, but let's look at a traditional Dutch oven. This is a 5-quart Lodge bale handle Dutch oven, and the reason I like the bale handle is that it's easy to carry when you're cooking outdoors. You can set it over a campfire. You can chuck it into the oven. It's got little ears that you can use to lift. It's not ideal, they're very small, but you can do it. But it'll take any source of heat. What I like about cooking in a Dutch oven is it is one pot. I can do all of my searing, I can do saute, I can sweat the vegetables, I can make soup, I can cook a large piece of meat, a chicken. It doesn't matter, you can pretty much cook anything in one of these. And over time, the designers of Dutch ovens have figured out how to make them as useful as possible. Now, one thing in my research that I've found is that there seems to be a standard ratio between the size of the flat cooking surface, so I'm talking about the area before the radius to the sidewall, so a ratio between the flat cooking surface and the top diameter of the pot. And that seems to be a sweet spot of around 75%. So let's take a look at this pot. The top rim is around 10 and1/4 inches. And the flat cooking surface is around 7.5. I'm doing this from memory, so don't quote me on this. But the important point is that the ratio is around 75%. So if this is a 10-inch top, the bottom would be 7.5 inches for easy math. And that's pretty standard on Dutch ovens. In fact, I've checked this out on the Lodge Dutch ovens, the Lodge Camp Dutch ovens. This is a 5-quart Lodge Camp Dutch oven, and the ratio holds. What's interesting about this is the 4-quart and the 5-quart Camp Dutch ovens both use a 10-inch lid, but they both have the same ratio. All they've done is they've added a little bit more metal on top to increase the volume. So very clever, they get to use the same lid. It just works. That ratio works. It even works on the fancy home pots. This is actually a very nice pot from Burrow Furnace. It's a new pot that they've come out with. It is actually the only enamel-coated cook pot made in the United States. It's the traditional home pot with the wide handles, but the ratio holds 75, 76%. So why is that important? Because you can do the large cuts of meat. You can sear a lot of volume without having to do multiple batches. You can sear big pieces of meat. That's what's important about this. So now that we've talked about the standard ratio for Dutch ovens, let me show you my least favorite Lodge cast iron Dutch oven. Actually, before I show you the oven, let me show you the lid. I want to compare for you. So this is the 10 1/4 inch lid from the 5-quart Dutch oven that I showed you earlier. This is the lid for the 7-quart Lodge Dutch oven. Quite a bit bigger, yeah? The 7-quart uses a 12-inch lid. The 5-quart uses the 10 1/4 inch lid. So looking at these two lids, you would think that the 7-quart is a much bigger Dutch oven. And you're right, on top. But let me show you the actual Dutch ovens. Here is our old friend, the 5-quart, 75% ratio Dutch oven. Here is the 7-quart bale handle Lodge Dutch oven. And I hope you can see this. I think you can. If you look at these ovens, you've got a much wider radius at the bottom and a much narrower angle between the bottom and the top, meaning that it flares out more like this. What's the impact of that? Well, the impact is that this oven breaks from the 75% standard ratio. In fact, this one is about 65%. What does that mean? That means that the flat cooking surface at the bottom of the pan, relative to the size of the pan, relative to it being a 7-quart pan, is small. Smaller than it is if you had the 75% ratio. That means that when you would normally go from 5-quart oven, let's say the 5-quart oven is too small. Traditionally, you would just grab your 7-quart oven, move on. In this case though, if your flat surface on the 5-quart isn't big enough and you grab the 7, you might not have a big enough cooking surface on your 7-inch Dutch oven, right? So you might have to go to a 9-inch to get that flat surface because you want to sear your meat. You want to fit a chicken in there. You want to fit a big pot roast in there. Whatever you're trying to cook, it may not fit. Now, if you saw the lids, and I'll show you again, this is the 7-quart, this is the 5-quart, this is 75%, this is 65%. It's a much, much bigger pot on top, but on the bottom, you've only got a 1/2 inch larger cooking surface in the 7-quart. So even though the top is 1 3/4 inch bigger diameter, the bottom is only a 1/2 inch. It breaks the rules. It doesn't allow you to fit incrementally that much more food in the bottom. This is shaped more like, I don't know, a soup pot. It's just, it fits a lot. It fits 7 quarts. It just doesn't have that flat bottom. So for me, this is my least favorite Lodge Dutch oven because they broke the standard ratio and they made the 7-quart less useful for a 7-quart oven than the 5 and the 9 are for their respective sizes. Why did they do that? Well, I don't know. I don't work for Lodge, but I've got a suspicion. I think Lodge did this to economize on the lid, manufacturing efficiencies. So this pot holds the standard Lodge 12-inch lid. So I think they told the engineers that were designing this mold, we want it to fit the standard 12-inch lid. And oh, by the way, it's got to be deep enough to hold a chicken. All the engineers had left that they could modify was the angle of the pot and the size of the bottom. So in order to make it a 7-quart, in order to make it fit nicely into the 579 series, they had to make the bottom smaller in order to utilize the 12-inch top and make it deep enough. I think that's what happened. I might be wrong, but I think that's what happened. So here's the shopping tip I promised you. And this also explains why the decision to use the 12-inch lid on the 7-quart Dutch oven was important. If you have the 5-quart bale handle Dutch oven, you also have a lid that fits perfectly on your 10 1/4 inch skillet. So now you've turned your skillet into a covered fry pan, a brazier, a covered casserole. It fits perfectly. Same goes for the 7-quart 12-inch lid on the 12-inch skillet and the 13 1/4 inch lid from the 9-quart Dutch oven that goes onto the 13 1/4 inch skillet. So the lids serve multiple purposes and they make them and sell them separately. So here's my tip. If you are looking for a cast iron lid for your Lodge Dutch oven skillet, watch sales, try to pick up a Dutch oven. Because then you buy the lid, but you also get a Dutch oven, and quite often, in the case of when I bought these, you paid next to nothing for the lid. Now you've got to catch a sale. If you just tried to do this on the website, it's not economical. But just know that those things do overlap, so if you are able to find it, you might as well get the Dutch oven for less price and get the lid as well. So be on the lookout, get that lid. Anyway, I hope this was helpful. I hope you found it useful. As always, if you like the content, feel free to share, and don't forget to subscribe in the lower right-hand corner. Take care, and we'll see you outdoors.